Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who are improving their communities locally, globally, and digitally. We're part of Rotary International, 1.2 something million people around the world and 36,000 clubs, all dedicated to service above self, that joy and meaning that comes from combining talent and treasure and interest and enthusiasm in order to do things in the community where there is a need. So we are happy you are joining us. One of the things we like to do is highlight fascinating people who've done really, really interesting things. And we have exactly that happening today because I I was very fortunate to learn about the art of Lyndon Barrois. And then even more fortunate that when I reached out to him, he was like, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So I was like, this guy's awesome. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Lyndon Barrois. And Lyndon, start just by giving us a little bit of your background, like what you do and where you're from.
Hey guys, good to be here. Thanks, Rushton, for for the convo. I live here now in LA, but I'm from New Orleans, so born and raised there. Grew up there, left New Orleans in '92 to come to LA and do grad school at Cal Arts and learn animation. But back before all that, the work that I was doing in New Orleans led me to California. I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist working in miniature sculpture, and I do stop motion films with those miniature sculptures, and that led to work in visual effects and feature film visual effects. So I've done 20 something features. If not more, like some may not be credited for because I've done maybe character development or whatever, but or some previs. But yeah, so you pointed out, Xavier U. I'm representing Xavier. That's my alma mater in New Orleans. I did my undergrad at Xavier, studying art, all fine arts, under John Scott with drawing, painting, ceramics, sculpture, printmaking, the whole shebang. And I was really thinking about a career in graphics, graphic design, because I had some posters published back in New Orleans before I started Xavier for the Boston Marathon and the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. And then when the Pope came to town, in 1987. So that was like 85, 86, 87. I had like three posters published. So that's the trajectory I was on. But when I graduated and applied to grad schools for that, I got rejected. So I was like, oh, well, okay, this is interesting. It's more competitive than I thought. But one thing, and while I was still working as an artist in New Orleans, I taught school for a year, and then I was on staff at a place called Young Artists, Young Aspirations, where we trained inner city kids for careers in art. And the person who ran that, Jana Napoli, who's, still a very close friend today. I mean, we all are, but like Jen and I are real close. She's the one who introduced me to Cal Arts and said, this is where you need to be. You should try this place. And that's where I got into. And so I went to Cal Arts to actually learn how to animate my miniatures. Because before that, I also had a show for the Super Bowl it was Super Bowl 24 in New Orleans. Oddly enough, Super Bowl, 59 is tomorrow in New Orleans. So it's 35 years ago. um, I had a show there where I made dioramas of the previous 23 games, recreating great moments in those games. And I had that show for the Super Bowl, and it got a lot of attention, a lot of popularity. HBO Sports covered it, PBS, a lot of local stations, and then eventually the Today Show and all this. So it was pretty wild. But that led to then I'm like, oh well, wow, I should. I always they were always toys to me. So I figured, okay, well, I really want to bring these to life and figure out how to animate. And then I applied to Cal Arts. They were like, oh, you got to come do that here because this is just bizarre.
And let's zero in on what it is that captures the attention of those who are stopping and saying, wait, what am I seeing here? I'm gonna call up this. All right. So
Okay.
this is one of the pieces from your website,
Yeah.
and not only
So,
does it capture who you are as a visual artist,
uh-huh.
tell
Thank
us
you.
what this is made of.
Okay, so that's actually a self-portrait.
Yes.
That's how I looked at Xavier. That was my, that was my garb. I mean, I'm still a big hat guy and, a trench guy. But those are made of chewing gum wrappers. So the figure itself is, from the hat to the coat, everything, those are chewing gum wrappers. The camera is made of balsa wood.
Mhm.
The the film reels are buttons wrapped in wrappers, and the lens is a wrapper with some clear acrylic caulking on it for the glass. So yeah, I just made like I said, a self-portrait. So that figure I did, I think, when I was back at Xavier. So that's over 3 decades old.
Well, I certainly want to get to more specifics related to the work with gum wrappers. I think there's symbolism upon symbolism in the use of the material, in the excellence that you bring to it. Um, but
Thank
but when you think about anyone who is an artist,
you. Mhm.
at some point along the way, there is a sense that, hey, this thing I'm doing, that people are interested in this. People are interested in this. I can take this to another level as well. Where along the way for you was that moment? And for our viewers, by the way, if you hadn't already cottoned on, we are doing a conversational program today, and that is going to perhaps be something to frame as you watch what we got going and the things that we're going to show. But I am so excited to hear about this story. So go ahead.
Okay, well, so when I started making these when I was a kid,
Mhm.
I was about 10 or 11. Again in New Orleans, and when you grow up in New Orleans, you're surrounded with all types of things. Obviously there's Mardi Gras, there's the jazz, there's food, but there's always something going on. So there's lots of music and color and art around everywhere. I mean, one of the things we did, one of the grammar school assignments is during Mardi Gras season, we all have to make floats, and so we'd make floats out of shoe boxes. So there was always this thing. You get shoe boxes, you glue beads and toys and everything to it. You just make these as cool and fancy floats as you miniature floats as you can. So that's part of the culture. And so it's always, finding found objects to do things. Now, whether that's, considered folk art or whatever, what have you. I mean, whatever label you want to attach to it, it's art, so it's subjective. Anyway, I always made things out of aluminum foil and clay and phone wire. And I mean, even chewing gum off church pews. When I'm sitting in church and I'm bored, I would, dig my fingers under it and mold people into it while church was going. Never thought about hygiene. I'm just making stuff. So one day, and then my mom chewed tons of gum. She chewed it all the time. And she chewed so much gum that she would swallow it while she was chewing. The doctor was like, you have to stop, ma'am. This is not healthy. But one thing I realized when she would throw away the wrappers that it was foil on one side and paper on the other. I mean, they were, sealed together. And so it was this one piece of material that if I sculpted it with the paper side out, I can take markers and color it. And that's where the light bulb went. So I was like, oh shit, I can make people. And I actually started making people to put in Hot Wheels cars because the cars are so cool. The doors open, the hoods open, everything, but nobody drives them. And I thought this is the dumbest shit ever that the cars are so cool, but there's nobody in them. So I started making people to put in the cars. I could put them in, get them out, have them pull all these things. And that turned into boxers because I'm also a big sports fanatic. But Rocky was popular at the time. I said, okay, well, I could have to put gloves on these guys and color them in like boxers with the shorts and all, and just make them fight. So they were always toys to me. And like I said, I started this when I was somewhere between 10 and 11, and continued it through junior high, high school, and even college, and not making the connection that this was sculpture and it was miniature art. I'm just making things. the drivers led to boxers, boxers led to teams. And I'm just making these things for the fun of it because I just love doing it. And I didn't realize what I was learning at Xavier, how much I was infusing that into the sculpture. Just, when you learn anatomy and proportion and all that, I'm like, okay, but it got to start looking like this. But not even realize what I'm doing is actual sculpture. And it's the weirdest thing. And then when I finally showed it to my professor, because I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do for my senior show, if I'm going to do some drawings or some paintings or some sculpture, whatever. I took some photographs of these guys on the field because I made a whole field. Like I say, this was my playground, and showed this to him, and he's like, dude, like, I don't think you realize what you're sitting on. Like, this is art. Like, he was baffled that I didn't make the connection. I said, I don't know, man. I'm just making toys, man. I'm thinking about graphic design. He's like, no, man. It's like, focus. And that's when I got the idea for the Super Bowl show. So that was my show. And then, yeah, and then I was like, okay, well, I've been painting these things so long. I gotta actually bring them to life.
So we're going to move. We're not going to follow a strict chronology. Let's just say as we do this, but I want to zero in on the boxing before we hit the sportraits that you've done.
Well, this is
This
part of Sportraits because they're all anything that's sports related is portraiture because these are
okay.
people. Yeah, they're actual people. Yeah. So this is a still from Prize Fighter. This is a film I did, I want to say 2018, 2019. And it's about Jack Johnson. And it recreates the events around the Jack Johnson Jim Jeffries fight on July 4th, I'm sorry, July 4th, 1910, which is why Jack there is in blue shorts with a flag as his belt. So that's an actual recreation. And so also, yeah, this is a still from the shooting of it because you see it. I shot against green because I did
Green screen.
a lot of green screen, but also a lot of environmental compositing, and I did facial compositing because I actually shot actors and put the actors put their faces, comp their faces onto the miniatures. So it's all
Wow.
bringing into my VFX world and my stop motion analog world, and then doing that also I shoot all my stop motion on iPhones. So again, that's a still with the phones in action and a lens attached to it that can get right as close as far as I need them to be. You know. So this was a fun shot because I'm shooting this from underneath up so you see the sky above them as they're just going at it. And that was a fun one. Yeah. So I'd get my hands. I shot through glass, as you can see. You improvise so many ways to figure this stuff out, which that is so much fun. And then there's another still, Jack, at dinner with his then wife, Etta Duryea. And so that's the actor. That's Peter Macon, and Peter just was played a huge part in the latest Planet of the Apes films. That's up for an Oscar. I think in visual effects. But Peter's a buddy, and so he played young Jack there, and then Keith David played older Jack Johnson.
Now, you referenced the visual arts.
Mhm.
You've been nominated for awards. You have won awards. You are a part of the Academy, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what it means to be part of a community that seeks to foster excellence.
Wow. That's a question. Seeks to foster excellence.
I say that as an educator. I'm constantly working with teens who are kind of like, what's the minimum, right? And trying to get them in that headspace. It's like, no, there's all kinds of things that are possible if you just
Yeah.
decide, what can I do to take it to the next level?
Yeah. I mean, just that question alone is the wrong question. There
Hmm?
is no minimum. There is no minimum. Never ask what's the minimum. As soon as you ask what's the minimum, you've already lowered the bar for yourself. No. So I can't even answer that question. But that's how I would answer that question. Um, you're always, I mean, look, when you do this work, it's very intense work. If I can, I'll get serious for a moment. It's fun and it looks glamorous, but it's very intense and it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of practice, and it's the whole Malcolm Gladwell thing of 10,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours plus to achieve a level of excellence. If it's something you really want to do, I mean, it's just something to pursue. It's a profession like anything else, and even though the tech is evolving now, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into the whole AI space, but you know, my whole training career, from an artist in the practical sense to a digital artist, has just been constant, nonstop practice of the field of animation. And my area of expertise is character animation. So in the whole umbrella of visual effects, there's the special effects, the practical effects, and then there's visual effects, the computer generated effect. Well, I mean, they're kind of all the same. They kind of blend in, but like I say, practical are things that are done outside of the computer. So things that are done in reality, like explosions, miniature sets, and demolition of those, creatures that are actually created before they go into the digital world, where you do things in the digital world where you exaggerate it all and you create things that are obviously do not exist, and things that you can demolish, so you're not risking the lives of people on set, and you're creating these stunts that normal, or I mean, whatever, even super athletes are not capable of doing without risk or death to themselves, risk of injury or death. So, and that stuff is just, like I said, it just takes a lot of intense work. So my area of expertise is the performance of that, bringing creatures to life. It's dinosaurs or it's chipmunks or it's digital humans or whatever. And then you have other aspects of the lighting and the lighting and the texturing to make it look like it's supposed to look, whether it's a real world environment or a stylized, animated environment, or and then you composite all these elements together and then you render all these. So there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of, a lot of hats under the umbrella, but
It
it's fun.
strikes
But it's not quick, and there are no shortcuts, and it's fun stuff.
Well, I mean, it strikes me that so you are one of these artists that celebrated, through the work you've done in the Matrix series and
Mhm.
The Thing and all of these really kind of fascinating movies. But it's this combination of a set of talents
Mhm.
that are not distinctive, right? So a lot of people are do what we just described. You did
Yes.
it in those films, but you have also developed this distinctive art with gum wrappers. There's a
Yeah.
story behind this that's really powerful, and that seems to connect with people. Like, talk a little bit about the international angles on this. You've put stuff together for, I believe, a program in South Korea fairly recently.
Yeah, well, yeah, but even before that, when I had the show, the original Super Bowl show back in 1990, from the press coverage that it got, Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum saw that and acquired 10. What's it? No, 15 of those original sculptures and put them in their museums around the world. So, over the last years, I'd have people still now, even periodically, will say, "Oh my God, I was in, Amsterdam and saw that. Is this you?" Yeah. So it's funny. They put them, they just placed them. I don't even know all the places they put them. They put them in Europe and Asia, um, just all over. And so, um, but then up till now, like you're saying, until yeah, what in 2022, South Korea held its first Frieze art fair, and I was asked to be in a show. The gallery that I was asked to be had galleries in Daegu, South Korea, and in Seoul, and so I was asked to be in a show during Frieze Week in Daegu. And I did a piece called Soul Sisters, which recreated the 5 gold medals that Jackie Joyner Kersey and Florence Griffith Joyner won in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. So I did something specific to the country. And this is a still from that piece right now. And so that piece was acquired by a museum in Seoul. So it's there. I went, I traveled with it, and it stayed. It's not coming home. But I'm proud for it to have it there. But I do miss that piece. It was such a special piece to put together.
How did the audiences there react differently, if at all, to the audience reaction to the work when you show it here in the United States?
That's weird. I don't. There's not a different reaction to it. It's because it's such a universal. Um, because the language that I'm speaking, I'm actually recreating us. And so whether it's on this continent or another, the language is universal. Like if you see what's going on, like you get it, and I'm recreating moments that people will recognize. So that's the thing. And that's what I want it to be, whether it's sports history or cultural events, or like news or politics, whatever. It's That's what I'm recreating. So you will recognize the moment. And I think the reaction, like when I did the World Cup piece that premiered in Miami for this show about the World Cup was at the Pérez Museum. Miami is such a hub of that sport itself that everyone who saw that from anywhere around the world, and especially a lot of the Hispanic community in Miami, they all recognized everything that was going on in this diorama. And it's like a table-sized diorama with 62 figures in it, recreating great moments in World Cup history from 1970 to 2016. And they just knew everything going on in that piece. And so the same thing happened in Korea when they saw these women, on the piece. They're like, oh, some people were there, attended those games, and some were obviously, in '88, some weren't born, younger people, but they all knew just because of the history of, the Olympic Games in Seoul. They knew what it was, and so yeah, that's why it's not coming home.
Well, it strikes me that both sports and art transcend culture in so many different ways.
They do.
And matter of fact, that sense of internationalization, I think one of the things that might be cool to show is a piece that's I think this may be the first piece I saw of your work,
Ah. Hmm.
and I mean this is another level of detail.
Yeah, well, this is also a sharper illustration of the facial compositing.
Yeah.
I mean, the more, like I say, the more practice, the more expert you become at it. Because the whole thing about it is not just putting a head on these things. It's actually painting the face into the texture of the material, so it all feels like it exists in the same world. Um, Yeah, in this particular piece, Kobe, it is the weirdest story. I was designing a piece for the team to recollect a history of the Lakers and their championships. I have a replica, Naismith Trophy here, and I was going to, recreate sports, and I still can do it, recreate great plays all around the trophy. Um, and I was researching it, and a dear friend is actually the announcer of the Lakers. Lawrence Tanter. He's a close friend. He's been announcing for the Lakers, 43 years now. He's the voice when you hear the Laker girls. That's LT. So, asking him about different moments that were significant to him because he's seen just about all the champions. He's seen most of them, and so while I was doing this, I had to go to a meeting in San Francisco, a portrait gallery meeting, because that's another part of the art umbrella, being on the board of the National Portrait Gallery. I'm at that meeting in downtown San Francisco with some board members and get the ping, the notification that helicopter went down in LA and Kobe was in it. And I just, it's like, what the hell is going on here? And so, and it went down in a neighborhood in in Calabasas where I was at a friend's the night before I flew to LA. And so it was just too many weird coincidences and just the shock of that to the world. And obviously to the city of LA. And so I never did the piece, but what I did do is I completed the Kobe sculpture, in memoriam. But I still have the piece in mind, but this piece lives. And this, another weird story to this is that piece, along with the chess set. I almost feel bad saying this because of the tragedy and things that friends and colleagues have lost everything in the fires. Those two pieces were almost casualties of the fire. They were in a house in Altadena with a producer friend, and he was actually got him out of the house before the house burned. Again, these things, yeah, you never know what stories art can tell themselves, even beyond the creation of them. It's so bizarre. Yeah.
Well, there's so much that art does
Yeah.
to pull out the stuff that's important within us.
Yeah,
And
and that was the weirdest thing. I mean, I'm watching the playoffs at a friend's and get a text that he sends me saying that. And I'm like, what? I called him either I'm like, screw the pieces. Are you okay? Like, I'm not, what? Like the fact that that's what you ran back for. Like one of the things, not, there were other things obviously, but one of the things you ran back that you felt you needed to get with those pieces. I was like, my mind was blown, just blown. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that first of all, I'm just blown away by your art. I'm just sitting here going, that is so cool.
Thank you.
Um, and I don't know why I thought of this, but I was curious if you were impacted at all by the Hollywood writers' strike.
Yes. Yes, my wife is a TV writer. She is a writer. She's been for decades, and she is, has written and created and was showrunner for lots of TV shows and written tons of episodes of television. And we were on the picket lines. Yes, like every week, not every day, but just about like three days a week, and every week we're on the picket line. And so that was, and we had, that was the second time. The first time was in, 2007. And so having to do it, what was it, 22? Yeah, three, well, not, no, when was that? 20, it was 23. See, everything's a blur. I think it was 23. Having to do it again, and who knows, when the next one will be, because, like I said, the tech is constantly evolving and it's constantly, affecting the industry, you know. Being someone who works in digital and visual effects, I've been in my home studio for years, cranking out these things, and I spent a year working at Epic, and then just exploring this new AI space. But I mean, most of my work, I'm most of my feature film work, I have to be on set or in a studio. But even now, like with the way the bandwidth that you have with servers and all these, central locations, so many digital artists work remotely that it had less of an effect on us because a lot of it is post, and it's in between those things. So most people I know did not experience the stoppage, but the writing did, and then the physical production. So it'll catch up to us later. But it's a weird thing. This, like I said, the industry is constantly evolving. We're going to see what's the next wave of this, what's the new frontier, what's the disruption. I mean, all of the above. Yeah. I hope that
Thank you.
answers the question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So, Lyndon, you are a director, an artist, a producer. You have been in the
Yeah.
space for years and years, helping kind of shape the direction of the industry in so many ways. Are there
Mhm.
messages that you find you are regularly giving to young people who are entering the field as a way of encouraging them, as a way of helping them kind of find their distinctiveness in the same way that your professor at Xavier helped you find yours?
Yeah, I just say do the work and find the area that you're most comfortable and you enjoy the most. Um, and when you do that, then go at that full on because you know, in in the digital world, you could wear a lot of hats, but I've always, from my experience and the people that I've worked with at on these A-list films, more or less, these A-list projects, it's very specialized. And so, like I say, my area was character animation. So I was not, not a compositor. I was not a lighter. I was not, a rigger or a modeler. So those things are very specialized. I mean, the things are changing now. But at that point, I would say just do the work and find the area, like I say, that you're most driven to. Because there are a lot of people, who say, I want to be an animator, but it wasn't their strength because that's not what they were concentrating on. People say that because they see the animation world, think that one person does everything. And that's very, very rare, unless you're in smaller studios, boutique shops, or, games companies. But even then, the higher end games are so big, those are also specialized skills. But, you know, they would say, I want to be an animator, and then they would do no animation work. I said, well, you got to really understand what that means. Wanting to be an animator is actually doing animation. It's not, replicating, showing me that you can draw, SpongeBob. It's can you actually bring SpongeBob to life? Can you animate SpongeBob? you know, yeah, and whether you're doing it hand drawn, you're doing it with puppets, stop motion, or you're doing it, CG with computers. Can you actually do that skill? Do you understand what that is? And so when you break it down to them, then they go, "Oh, I didn't realize that." I say, "Yeah." So now focus on that and make sure you're going on those correct paths. Yeah. If you like sculpting, then you're a modeler. If you like painting, you're a lighter. What I mean? It's things like that, and a compositor. So it's those things. They're very specialized things, and yeah, what those niches lead to. Mine was performance.
Well, in terms of time, that's probably a good place to kind of wind things down. I'm going to hand it back to you in just a minute to give the final word. But for everybody who has joined us for this recording, whether you watched it on our YouTube channel or on our SiliconValleyRotary.com page, or you listened to it on one of our podcasts, we thank you for giving your time to hearing our stories and the ones we are working so hard to make sure that there is that next group that gets to discover the inspiring things that we have had the good fortune of running across in some fashion. So, as someone who might be interested in service to others, I hope that you out there will stop and take a look at Rotary.org as an organization, or Rotary.cool will get you to our club, and you can get kind of a sense of what it would mean to be part of an international group making the world a better place. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. So, Lyndon, what would you like people to have in mind as they finish the video or podcast?
I would just say, whatever it is, making a choice to be an artist is tough enough. But don't be discouraged by that. Everything you want to do is tough. Everything you want to excel at is tough. My thing, every show I've stepped on, every film I've started, or even project personal, my whole thing is to have fun with it. It's got to be fun. Um, if the fun is there, everything else falls in place. The the perseverance, the achievements, the money, it all falls into place. But it's got to be fun. And I always say, the minute I am not having fun doing any of this, that's when I'm doing something else. I'm going to stop. And fortunately, I've been always having fun, and I'm going to continue to have fun. But that's what it's got to be, because it's very intense work and it's very intense study and practice, but keep it fun. Anyone who tries to discourage you from a career in art, they don't understand. If you see, I'm surrounded with it. It's what it lives and breathes, and it's everywhere. Everything we interact with is art. So never get discouraged by that. Everything we're wearing all started on a drawing board. Everything. So don't get discouraged by that.
Well, don't get discouraged and have fun is a good way to do service as well. Thank you so much, Lyndon. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.